In a world of scorching heat, clothing is nothing but a fashion statement, which is why Egypt had such elaborate and beautiful, or I don't know what the word is, for having such great clothes. But if you look further down into Southern Africa and Eastern Africa and Western Africa, they have the same level of technique or skill. In fact, some Europeans, when they got to Africa, reported that the weaving methods of Africa far surpassed those of Europe and even Asia.
At the end of the 15th century and the beginning of the 16th century, the Swahili societies from Mogadishu all the way to Kilwa off the coast of Mozambique were at the height of their history in terms of their commercial civilization, to the point that the Portuguese sailors looked at these coastal towns bustling with economic activity, and they felt that, we need to take over. In many communities, land was relatively abundant, and by accounts of missionaries and soldiers, they rated Congo's agriculture as more productive than Portugal's. And in the area of two crafts or industries, one was textiles, the other was iron making. They considered these equal to the best in Europe.
Africa's secret weapon was the same thing that makes some people believe that Africa is technically still the richest continent in the world, according to resources, and that's natural resources. I mean, if you listen to what he says and describes seeing in the jungles of Congo, this author, you will realize that in his head, he had just hit the jackpot. And he would collect a couple years later when he returned with the aim of colonization. But the positive part is that he did sit there and describe all that he saw. And he says, meanwhile, with Uludi the coxswain, young Shumri, his brother, and their cousin Saiwa, I went about tape line in hand, surveying the glorious timber. And from my notebook, I take the following particulars jotted down during the ramble. 3 specimens of cottonwood, the largest close to the cove, measured in girth 13 feet 6 inches, trunk unbranched for about 60 feet. Its cotton used as timber by the Babwende. 8 specimens of Bashia parki, or shea butter tree, bark rough and 1.5-inch thick, exudes a yellowish white sticky matter which my boat boys called its milk. Splendid timber, core, dark and very hard, outside wood from 2 to 3 inches deep, and whiter, easily worked, largest measured 12 feet round, height of unbranched stem 55 feet, others measured 10, 11, 10, and 10.5 feet. 10 specimens of the Ficus cochiana, or mku, as Uledi called it, bark half an inch thick, largest 13 feet in girth. Many specimens of African silver beech, African ash, wild olive, zygia, or mkundi, largest 24 feet circumferential measurement. Acacia catechu, gruia, mkuma, good timber tree for small canoes, a glorious Tamarindus indica with amplitude of crown branching far and dense, 9 feet round, several specimens of rhubarcu and sterculecu, candleberry tree, the Lophira alata, Balsamodendrus, Ledolfia florida, an Indian rubber producing creeper in very large numbers. Proteas, several Laurenthicae, ivory button or nut trees, wild betel, Anacardium occidentale or cashew tree, cola nut tree, wild mango tree, Jatropha carcass or the physic nut tree, Kigalius, several acacia, Arabicus near the river within a few feet of the cove, and other gums, Euphoria antiquarium and E. captit medusa on the craggy ground above the cove, orchids upon humus-covered granite fragments and far aloft in the forks of trees, as well as several species of ferns and aloes, and wild pineapples upon the rock-strewn slope. This, by the way, goes on for a couple pages, so we're just going to cut it off over there. And of course, the India rubber part I have to explain, and I'm going to make a video exclusively about the rubber. But when they say India rubber, before I thought they meant India, the country, but actually India rubber refers to Native American rubber, because the only two places in the world that have natural rubber, and then they're not the only places in the world that have natural rubber, but they have natural rubber, but then they utilized the natural rubber and made unnatural rubber. In other words, they solidified the rubber a little bit, making rubber balls, making rubber bells, rubber musical instruments, over and over again. This shows how detailed to art, how deep into art they were. They were into it very much. And of course, they had rubber shoes. That's the one thing that I forgot, to say. They had rubber shoes, meaning that their shoes, even though they made shoes out of leather for the most part, they had rubber in them sometimes.